It's always game day in Cleveland. He's Daryl Ryder. I'm Andy Baskin. Man, what a way to end the preseason as the prevailing storyline continues as we head to roster cuts coming up on the 29th, just 3 days away from when we recorded this at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Again, Daryl, Cade York's name will be the name we talk about time and time again.
Whoa, boy. Do the Browns have a problem? It's a big one. Look, I said going into this preseason game, Andy, he had to make all his kicks. So what happens? He comes right out, misses the first PAT, gets run into, nicked up, goes to the tent real quick. They take a peek at him, ends up being okay, makes the 3 PATs. You're like, okay, he's settled in. He's going to be okay. He makes the 40-yard field goal with around 4 minutes to go to give them the lead back at 32-30. And then as fate would have it, right, it sets up for him to be in a game-winning situation. And look, I don't even care that the thing got partially deflected. It didn't look good off his foot to begin with.
No, it didn't. It didn't.
His mechanics are off. I don't know if it's his stride or what. I'm not a kicking coach, but he's kicking a lot of knuckleballs right now. He's not dependable. I think they don't have a choice. I know what Andrew Berry said on the team broadcast during the game. They're confident in Cade going into the season. They feel good about whatever. The bottom line is he is unreliable right now. I don't see a pathway, Andy, where he can be your week 1 kicker and Kevin Stefanski's going to sleep well at night.
So what do? Do you wait for cuts or do you go out and get a free agent?
I think you wait for cuts. So York makes the initial 53. But before everybody throws the parade and claps their hands, on Wednesday, that's when the changes to the roster actually materially begin because the waiver wire hits at noon. That's when the 16 players get put on the practice squad, whether that's all existing Cleveland Browns or Andrew Berry goes ahead and, takes a peek at what's available out there and supplements in that fashion. But I think you have to put York on waivers at that point. He'll probably get through waivers, and then you can put him on the practice squad. So you don't have to completely 100% move on from him. You can keep him on the practice squad, maybe work with him, whether it's Bubba Ventrone or they send him, like we talked about on the last podcast, to a kicking coach or whatever. But I really feel like, Andy, they have to go into week 1 with a veteran kicker. You cannot start the season with Cade York as your kicker and feel like you send him out there each and every time he's going to put it over the bar and through the sticks because we just have not seen that consistency here in the preseason.
I guess the one positive, if you want to keep Cade York, is that he has been struggling, and every other general manager in the NFL knows it too, right? So, I mean, that's your hope that if you want to try to get him through on the practice squad, that nobody wants to touch him right now. Because if you're a general manager and you're looking for a kicker on another team and you pick up Cade York, people are going to be like, why did we pick this guy up? He was struggling in Cleveland. So I think that maybe missing wasn't a bad thing. Here's another thing I think we might hear. He's injured. Put him on the injured list to start the season because he did get hurt in the beginning of the game, and there's a possibility that he's got a bruised ankle or whatever's going on. Remember, he had to go to the tent.
Officially a shin.
Shin, yeah, officially a shin. Sorry, not an ankle. So maybe that might be another pathway for them if they wanted to put him on the physically unable to perform list for a couple weeks or IR or whatever you want to call it this week. You know what I'm saying? That might be another option for them.
Yeah, but he has to open the season on the 53 to be eligible to return. Remember that.
Okay, if he's hurt.
So and again, even with my plan, he makes the initial. It's not the final 53 people. It is the initial 53. And the reason I called it that is because the roster will change quickly in the coming days that follow. So it's you call it the first 53, as I call it the initial 53. He's on it regardless. He makes the team initially. And then to your point, yeah, I mean, he did get knocked in the shin. And you can wink, wink, nudge, nudge, then put him on IR. So again, you keep him with the organization. And I think that kind of saves Andrew Berry a little bit as well, buys him. So not that he needs save, but you understand what I'm saying. Like it buys him some more time because keep in mind, this is a 4th round draft pick.
Yeah, well, the other part of it is, too, if you're Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, you don't want to lose a game because of a guy you knew struggled struggled last year, struggled in the beginning of the season. I mean, you don't want to. And if somebody else comes in, they'll be like, well, he wasn't here. He just got here. There's a little bit of leeway. We were talking about this on the pregame show where Phil Dawson knew that anytime he had to kick a field goal, I think it was like 53 plus,
Right.
he kicked much easier because he knew if they missed it, well, it was 53, 54. And, not everyone's expected to make that. I think that's what he said at the time, that it was, or maybe it was plus 55, but it was something close to that. And I thought that was interesting. Dave Zassadil was bringing that up. And,
right.
There's pressure and then there's folding under pressure. And right now, I mean, I know he seems to talk with confidence, but I don't have a lot of confidence, and I don't think Browns fans do either. In fact, I watched the majority of the game at a restaurant, and people were Bronx cheering him the entire game.
Oh, my
The entire bar was Bronx cheering him.
So I just looked up real quick just to give some folks the idea of what might be available out there. Mason Crosby, Ryan Suckup, Robbie Gould.
That's what you need to say.
There you go. That's the guy you want, is Robbie Gould, huh?
Well, the thing about it is, though, you bring Robbie Gould in, maybe you can hang on to Cade for the whole year because you don't know how many years he has left in him. If you can squeeze one more year, I mean, he's so reliable, and in the playoffs, unbelievably reliable. But, from what we had heard in the beginning of camp, that the team he goes to, he wants to go to a team that he thinks is going to make the playoffs. So,
right.
And I don't know why you wouldn't think that. Although Deshaun Watson showed a little the throw the worm burner, which wasn't exactly thrilling. But we'll come back to that in a second. I also want to talk about Jakeem Grant because here's a guy that worked his way back. It appeared that he was on the roster, and that injury at the beginning of the game was ugly.
Yeah, it was difficult. And unfortunately, it kind of solves that particular roster spot for the Browns because, Grant was on the team up until that injury. It's just difficult to see. I mean, he worked so hard to come back from that ruptured Achilles last year, which he suffered in training camp while running a go route up the far sideline. It was a freak injury. So you feel really, really bad for him. It was his first live action since then. They put him out there. Kevin Stefanski asked him during the week, hey, do you need Jakeem to take any offensive reps for you to feel comfortable with him? And one word answer, no. And then later on, a little bit of a follow-up as far as the return. And Stefanski said, we value the return game in spite of the rule tweaks that occurred. The fair catch that, puts I got to tell you, Andy, watching a lot of these kickoff returns in the preseason, not just Browns games, but just kind of taking a peek around the league. The reason we haven't seen that rule applied is because everyone's auditioning for jobs. So they're out there trying to make plays. I'm going to be very curious what that percentage looks like, though, the fair catch percentage outside the goal line during the regular season. Because quite frankly, even with all due respect to Demetric Felton return, like if it's outside the goal line, just take the fair catch and the ball at the 25-yard line. I don't know that the risk is worth it, right? How many times do we see holding penalties on kickoffs that wipe out good return? Like it feels like every time there's a good return, there's a holding penalty that comes with it. So I'm of the mindset, with all due respect to what Kevin Stefanski has said, when we've talked to Bubba Ventrone, special teams coordinator, he has said, we value the return. We're going to return it. We're not we're not really worried and focused about that new rule. I think the Browns are a team that need to take advantage of that new rule now that they lost their primary returner for the second year in a row. And again, my heart goes out to Jakeem because I know how hard he worked to come back from that injury.
In the shop every day, trying to get better every day. So, all right, Daryl, let's do this. Let's take a quick timeout. We'll come back. I want to talk about the roster when we come back. And, maybe there may be more repercussions to the Jakeem Grant injury than we think that could also affect the running back spot. So I want to hear what your first 53 is going to be when we come back. It's always game day in Cleveland.